begin, consider this. How far would a royal family go to preserve their legacy? How much were they willing to sacrifice to keep power in the bloodline? What if that sacrifice came in the form of a child, deformed, despised, yet destined by birth to rule? If dark, hidden corners of history fascinate you, hit that subscribe button. We're about to uncover a tale buried beneath royal lies and velvet tapestries. It begins not with a monster, but with a throne. Throughout history, monarchies have been obsessed with blood. Not spilled blood, but pure blood. Blue blood. Sacred blood. Families intermarried for generations. Cousins marrying cousins. Uncles marrying nieces. Even siblings whispered to be bound in secret. Their reason was simple: to keep power concentrated, unchallenged, unshared. But nature is not easily bent to the will of kings. And when the same bloodline coils back on itself for too long, it does not strengthen, it breaks. One such story lies in the heart of old Europe, within the heavy stone walls of a long-forgotten palace. A queen was chosen not for love, not even for alliance, but because she shared the right pedigree. Her ancestry traced back to the same twisted roots as her husband's. Their marriage was a celebration of legacy, but also a quiet pact of genetic gamble. She was young when she married, barely past childhood, groomed from birth to be silent, graceful, and dutiful. Her beauty was often remarked upon: pale skin, delicate features, wide eyes that seemed almost too innocent. But behind them lay a deep unease. She had been raised in a family that viewed children as obligations to dynasties, not joys to be cherished. The king was older, cold. He had seen the madness that ran through his own line. An uncle who barked like a dog in court, a brother with a skull too soft to wear a crown, and a mother whose sudden fits of rage left broken furniture and broken bones in her wake. But the court had a way of hiding such things behind heavy curtains and silk robes. When the queen became pregnant, it was hailed as divine providence. Bells rang, tapestries were commissioned. A royal heir, a symbol of continuity, was growing in her womb. But from the start, something felt wrong. The pregnancy was long, exhausting. The queen rarely emerged from her chambers. Servants whispered that she was haunted, that strange noise could be heard in the night, crying, growling, and worse, the sound of furniture dragging across the floor when no one was inside. She stopped appearing at public events. Her doctors, chosen more for loyalty than skill, offered no real answers. Just leeches, prayers, and blind optimism. Then came the birth. No official record describes the child in detail, but from private letters, scattered medical reports, and the writings of one court midwife who disappeared shortly after, we can piece together what happened. The child was born severely deformed, his limbs twisted unnaturally. His skull was misshapen, with a wide, bulging forehead and a narrow, receding chin. His eyes did not blink in unison, and his mouth hung slightly open, even at rest. The court called it a tragedy. Behind closed doors, it was something far more dangerous: a shame, a threat, a living reminder that their sacred blood had turned against them. The king ordered that no portraits be painted, no names be spoken. The child was hidden, first in a sealed wing of the palace, then, when rumors grew too loud, sent away to a private estate far from court. Only the queen visited him. She came once a week, heavily veiled, her hands trembling beneath her gloves. Yet, strangely, she grew attached to him. She called him "my little prince" in letters that survive only in fragments. She believed he had a soul worth saving. She sang to him. She read him poetry. She taught him to smile, though one side of his face could not move. When he died at the age of 7, cause of death unknown, she went into seclusion. Her hair turned white within a year. She never bore another child. The palace quickly scrubbed his existence from history. Portraits were destroyed, letters burned. His name was never added to the royal registry. In the official record, the queen was barren, childless, a failure. But hidden in a monastery archive, a priest's diary recounts a visit to the estate where the child lived. He described a boy unlike any other, trapped in a beautiful prison, doted upon by a mother who feared him and loved him equally. The priest wrote that the boy's eyes were full of sorrow, that when he died, even the birds around the estate were silent for 3 days. Centuries later, historians stumbled upon the story again, not through official channels, but through the oral histories of the villagers who lived nearby. They spoke of a ghost, pale, malformed, seen walking the grounds of the old estate at night, whispering the name of a mother who could not save him. This is not a fairy tale. It is not a legend. It is what happens when power becomes obsession and bloodlines are treated like chains of ownership rather than gifts of life. The so-called monster was not a curse. He was a child, a boy born into a palace that could not love him. And the queen? She did not give birth to a monster. She gave birth to the truth, a truth her world was not ready to face. The death of the child did not end the story. It only forced it deeper underground. For a royal house obsessed with legacy, shame was more dangerous than war. A child born deformed, no matter the cause, was not just a personal tragedy. It was a threat to the illusion of divine rule. In a world where kings were said to be chosen by God, how could such a mistake happen? The answer: it couldn't, not officially. Within weeks of the boy's death, the palace had begun a carefully orchestrated campaign to erase him from memory. His nursery was cleared and turned into a guest room. Every servant who had attended to the queen during her pregnancy was either dismissed or relocated. Some were given pensions with strict gag orders. Others disappeared entirely. What the world saw instead was a queen who had lost a child in the womb. That was the official line: stillbirth. A single word used to wipe away a living, breathing human being from history. But behind closed doors, the royal family knew they were dealing with more than grief. They were dealing with a pattern. This child wasn't the first and might not be the last. For decades, minor deformities had been whispered about in the bloodline. A prince born without eyebrows, a princess who couldn't speak, a royal cousin who drooled uncontrollably and was never seen in public. The family called these anomalies. But physicians, those few who weren't silenced, recognized what they were: the result of relentless inbreeding. The royal genealogists, who had once proudly mapped the family tree like a divine scripture, quietly buried branches that looped back on themselves. Cousins marrying cousins, again and again,
Subscribe to
for
my channel.
generations. Marriages arranged not by compatibility, but by blood purity. This incestuous loop was never spoken aloud. Instead, it was cloaked in myth. Chosen by God. Sacred lineage. These were the mantras whispered at court. But the walls of the palace held memories the paintings did not show. So the monarchy did what it did best. They rewrote the story. A court painter, one of the finest in the land, was summoned in order to paint a portrait of the queen in mourning. But the child was not to be included. Instead, a single white rose rested on her lap, symbolizing innocence lost without explanation. The painting became famous, hung in galleries, printed in books, but no one ever asked, where was the child? The church was enlisted next. A sermon was commissioned, crafted in poetic Latin, that spoke of divine will and the pain that visits great women so that they may rise stronger. It was preached in cathedrals across the kingdom. The message was clear. The queen's suffering was noble, even holy. To question it was to question the will of God. Meanwhile, the boy's body was not buried in the royal crypt. It was placed in a small graveyard attached to a hunting estate far from the capital. The headstone bore no name, only a symbol, an angel with broken wings. But history has a way of resurfacing. Generations later, during the reign of the Queen's great-granddaughter, a scandal erupted. A disgraced historian leaked documents showing the true nature of several royal births. Letters, medical records, and scribbled marginalia by court tutors hinted at the truth. Mental illness, physical deformities, and rampant hereditary disease had plagued the bloodline for centuries. The scandal was swiftly crushed, but not before it raised an uncomfortable question. How many royals were erased, just like the boy? How many children were hidden behind curtains, locked in attics, or sent away to distant monasteries? By the early 20th century, as science advanced and the human genome became better understood, historians began revisiting these monsters of history. And what they found was heartbreaking. Most were not monsters at all. They were victims of royal pride, born into families that could not admit fault, could not accept weakness, and would rather bury a child than acknowledge a flawed crown. One historian discovered a chest of letters from the queen to her sister. In them, she described her son in hauntingly beautiful terms. His eyes were like the sky before rain, she wrote. He smiled with effort, but when he did, I felt the world tilt a little toward grace. She spoke of his pain, his seizures, his fears, but also of his laughter. How he once giggled uncontrollably at the fluttering of a curtain. How he said her name, Mama, only once, just before his death. Those letters were never published officially, but copies circulated among academic circles. One scholar called them the most human thing ever written by a queen. And yet, her legacy remains split. To the world, she is still the grieving queen who never had a child. A sterile monarch, a noble sufferer. But we know the truth. She was a mother. She was a woman trapped in a machine that demanded perfection and punished deviation. She gave birth not to a monster, but to a child whose only crime was being born into a family that demanded gods, not humans. And in doing so, she revealed the great lie of monarchy itself, that royalty is not divine. It is not sacred. It is not immune to consequence. It is, in the end, just people, flawed, frightened, and sometimes heartbreakingly cruel. If you've made it this far, thank you. These aren't easy stories to hear, but they're important, because the past doesn't vanish, it just hides. And every now and then, it's up to us to peel back the velvet curtain and remember the forgotten. If you found this journey through royal shadows moving or thought-provoking, subscribe to the channel. New stories are coming every week, some darker, some stranger, but all deeply human. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and never stop questioning the histories we've been told.